Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 685 for the 23rd of Tishrei in a regular year. This is the episode for Simchas Torah, so I am pre-recording this episode, as I always do for different Yamim Tovim and Shabbos. So those of you who have been following along the podcast for a while might recall that just about a month ago, or in fact exactly a month ago, come to think of it, it was my Jewish birthday, the 23rd of Elul. And I explained there how I actually celebrate my birthday on 2 days, on the 23rd and on the 24th of Elul, because my birthday falls out, the exact time that I was born falls out at a really interesting time in the Jewish calendar, which is known as Bein Hashmashos, Twilight. So as many of you know, then in Judaism, we start calculating the days begin at night. So whether it's a holiday or Shabbos, or we want to signify that it's a certain day or whatever, then that actual day begins the day before at sundown and then continues on into nightfall the next day. So Twilight, otherwise known as Bein Hashmashos, which literally means between the suns, it's between sunset and nightfall, is a really interesting time in Judaism where it's not clear. We're kind of neither here nor there. It's not clear which day we're in. Because think about it, because if the days in Judaism begin at sunset, but then end at nightfall, then that following day, it's not sunset to sunset, because then it's like sunset to sunset, and then that sunset to nightfall the following day. It's not clear. It's sort of still the continuation of the previous day, but we've also begun the new day. So it's sort of both. Hence, I celebrate my birthday on both days. So this past year, the first day of my birthday actually fell out on Shabbos. And so after candlelighting, I decided, to do something kind of holy and learn something in honor of my birthday. So I opened up this book that I have all about prayers that we say on Shabbos. I thought that would be kind of apropos. And by Hashgacha Pratis, by divine providence, where I was up to in the book was exactly all about this time period of Bein Hashmashos, of Twilight, on Shabbos specifically. And it gave me some new and interesting insights all about this Twilight period. And I thought I'd share some of these with you now, even though it's not my birthday anymore. You might be like, why is she sharing all of this now? Because as we'll see, today's Tanya is actually all about this period of Bein Hashmashos, this period of Twilight, both during the week and also on Shabbos itself, and the different recommendations that the Alter Rebbe gave to us to learn, of what to learn during this time period. It's a very opportune time for learning. So this period of Twilight is really a very special, a very mystical kind of time in general. It's kind of like a connector, as we'll see, between the physical reality and the spiritual reality, which is why we can come to understand why it is that there were certain things that were created during this time period in the original creation that God created that are sort of kind of serve as this conduit between spirituality and physicality. For example, the man, the bread that we ate in the desert was created during this time period. And this bread that we ate, this man, was kind of physical in the sense that it was a physical kind of bread, but it was spiritual in the sense that it didn't behave like regular physical bread. It tasted like whatever they wanted it to taste like. It didn't get absorbed in the body in a physical way, the way regular bread gets absorbed. The luchos also were created during this period of Bein Hashmashos, which the luchos, also the tablets, physical, very physical, made out of stone reality, but at the same time, something very ethereal about them. We know that the letters of the tablets were carved into the tablets, and In Hebrew, the letter samach, which is the Hebrew letter, as well as the final mem, the mem sofit, are both just kind of like a circle. And so if you think about this, if they were carved into the tablets, they were kind of hovering. It was a miracle, So again, there was like this miraculous nature about these very physical tablets. So this period of Twilight, this period of Bein Hashmashos is really very special, very mystical, very spiritual on any day. And this is especially true on Shabbos. Because as we've learned many times in Tanya at this point, that God creates the world continuously, something from nothing all the time through his speech, right? But in the original story of creation, the way that it's described is that God created the world in 6 days, and then on the 7th day, he rested. And so when we think about that in terms of our, in light of HaKodesh and everything we know about God constantly creating the world, something from nothing all the time, and our very real lived experience of Shabbos, we see that, if God's constantly creating the world, something from nothing all the time, how does that reconcile with the fact that he rested on Shabbos? So the way that this is explained according to HaKodesh, and this is what I learned that night on my birthday, reading about Bein Hashmashos, reading about the twilight time, specifically on Shabbos, is that, of course, God continues to create the world on Shabbos, because if God didn't continue to create the world on Shabbos, it would cease, God forbid, to exist. What's going on is that on the 6 days of creation, on the 6 days of the week, God creates the world through speech. And then when it comes to Shabbos, God continues to create the world, but he creates the world through thought. So it's a higher type of creation. There's something more, again, ethereal about it, something a little bit less materialistic about this form of creation. And so this period of Bein Hashmashos, this book was saying, and for reference, this sefer, because I keep mentioning it, was what's called Lilmod Ech Litpalel by Rabbi Gopin. And it's, to learn how to pray by Rabbi Gopin. He has a bunch of different books about giving different insights into prayer. So this was the edition that was specifically about Shabbos. So in this sefer that I was learning, it was talking about how this period of Bein Hashmashos is really special because this Bein Hashmashos on Shabbos, because this is the period of time when it's sort of in between speech and thought. We're kind of like in this like in between state of speech and thought. So it's sort of like the space in which our thoughts have some type of verbalization within them, or they're not just totally abstract. There is a vocal, verbalized type of thing in, at least to ourselves, like in terms of like sort of thinking about what it is that we're going to say, even if we don't actually say it out loud yet. And our speech has a certain type of thoughtfulness in it. Like we, even when we're saying different words, we are thinking, there's a thought process that goes on behind the speech that we're saying, that we're actually speaking out loud. So it's this interesting time period that's between speech and thought. So that's just a little bit of insight into what Twilight, what Bein Hashmashos is on Shabbos. But as mentioned, this period of Bein Hashmashos is really special on any day of the week. And so with that in mind, I think that will give a little bit of an insight into what we're going to be learning about today, which is just some very straightforward directives that the Alter Rebbe gives to his Chassidim as to what they should be doing, what they should be preoccupying themselves with during this period of Bein Hashmashos, both during the week as well as on Shabbos. So in brief, as we'll see, we'll get more into detail with it soon when we get into the text, the Alter Rebbe advises his Chassidim to learn what's known as Ein Yaakov, which are the stories or quote unquote legends that are written about in the Gemara, which rather than seeing them as just like these simple kind of like fables or whatever, but they're actually known to contain great secrets within them, because the stories sometimes, when an idea is so deep, and rather than expressing it in data format, like in like a lecture format, sometimes telling a story, telling a parable is a much more powerful way of bringing across these messages. And the deeper an idea is, the more one might need to clothe it in these stories. So the stories that are found in the Talmud are really known to be very profound and deep, and they're not just simple stories. And then in addition to learning these stories, these Ein Yaakov stories, as we'll see, the Alter Rebbe also advises that we should learn some practical laws, practical halachos during this time as well on weekdays. And then on Shabbos, he actually tells us that we should be learning the halachos of Shabbos, the laws of pertaining to Shabbos. Somebody might think that they're this great scholar, or maybe we all are aware of the fact that we're not. Regardless of the level that you're at, it's always good to review the laws or learn them for the first time. And a good time to do this, to learn about the laws of Shabbos, is specifically during the, you can learn it at any time, but specifically, to emphasize the learning of it during this period of time of twilight on Shabbos. So as soon as Shabbos comes in on Friday night, lighting candles, or go to a man, you go to shul, that's a really good time to learn about the halachas of Shabbos. Now, another thing to keep in mind about today's episode is that it actually follows from yesterday's episode. So go back and review yesterday's episode if you need to. So yesterday was kind of a harsh episode, a harsh section in which the Alter Rebbe was berating his chassidim and expressing his disapproval of the fact that he noticed that a lot of people were talking in shul about frivolous things, wasting time, basically, instead of learning Torah, when this is a prime opportunity to draw down the Shekhinah into the world. When you have 10 Jews together, then the Shekhinah gathers. And so when 10 Jews are gathered together and they don't discuss words of Torah, this is basically, God forbid, a way of pushing away the Shekhinah. It's pretty intense. So today, the Alter Rebbe is going to give a remedy for this, to rectify this pushing away the Shekhinah and how to do this. So the prescription that the Alter Rebbe gives to rectify this phenomenon is to learn, right? So it's pretty straightforward, is to learn, and specifically for people to learn during the time of what we can think of as twilight. This is between the Mincha and Ma'ariv prayers in shul. So Mincha is the prayers that are said during the afternoon time, and Ma'ariv is the prayers that are said at night. And so during this time, there's sort of like this middle ground of in between period where we're not praying. So what do we do? So this is the time that the Alter Rebbe says is a good time for people to learn in shul. So let's get into the text and see how the Alter Rebbe explains this and what he specifically advises the men to learn in shul. So he starts off and he says, therefore, meaning keeping all of this in mind that we learned yesterday about pushing away the Shekhinah, God forbid, when people just sit around and talk about frivolous things and things like that. So he says, don't do this. First of all, he says, don't do this evil thing of not respecting the sanctity of 10 Jews gathered together, but rather you should. And here he kind of takes a citation, but he mixes around the words a little. He changes the words a little bit, but this is a citation from Yirmiyahu chapter 13, verse 16, where he says that you should give glory to God, your God, right before it grows dark. So the actual citation from Yirmiyahu is Tznu laHashem Elokechem kavod b'terem yachshich. So you should give honor to God, your God, right before it grows dark. So what does this mean? How does the Alter Rebbe interpret this? How do we give honor to God? He says this is referring to the time between Mincha and Ma'ariv every weekday. So he says that during this time between Mincha and Ma'ariv prayers, between the afternoon prayers and the evening prayers, then in groups of 10, at least 10, basically, Jews should gather together and learn the inner dimension of the Torah, the Pnimius Torah. This is often a reference to Kabbalah or Chassidus, like the more mystical dimensions of the Torah. But here, the Alter Rebbe specifies that actually what he's referring to is what's known as Ein Yaakov. This is the eye of Yaakov. It's literally translated as, but this is the portion of the Gemara that deals with stories. There's stories that are written in the Gemara, and these stories are known to contain really, really deep secrets in them. And the Alter Rebbe specifies this. He says that most of the secrets of Torah are actually hidden in this Ein Yaakov. And studying this Ein Yaakov is a way to atone for the sins of man, as it is written in the writings of the Arizal. The Arizal explained this, that these stories that are written in the Gemara are not just these simple, easy to read stories. They're actually contain very deep messages within them, very deep secrets. And not only that, okay, so there's a secret dimension to them, and all the secrets of the Torah are actually contained within this Ein Yaakov, but also when you read them on a very simple, literal way, then they teach lessons. These are moralistic stories that teach lessons in how a person should live their lives in the path of God. And this will enable a person to take counsel in their soul in heavenly matters, meaning matters related to Torah and Mitzvos, as everybody who is wise of heart knows. So basically, the Alter Rebbe is saying that learning Ein Yaakov between Mincha and Ma'ariv is a really good thing. First of all, because it's the secrets of the Torah. It contains the secrets of the Torah in it, which will atone for a person's sins. And also, it actually gives good advice. It's like, you're learning good moral lessons from these stories. And not only this, says the Alter Rebbe, but also, in addition to learning Ein Yaakov, people should also learn a little bit of Shulchan Aruch, which is the code of Jewish law, specifically the section known as the Orach Chaim, which is the laws that have to do with things that every person should really know, very practical laws in our service of God. And the Alter Rebbe says that for all of this, like meaning this idea of learning for all of this, is specifically learning halachos, learning the Jewish laws, then it says that everybody who learns halachas every day, anybody who learns halachas every day is guaranteed life in the world to come. This is taught in the Gemara in both Megillah, page 28b, and Nedarim, page 73a. So this is specifically a reference to learning about practical halachos. So it's not just about learning about like theoretical halachos that will never really apply to a person, but it's specifically a reference. And this is Rashi explains this. Says the Alter Rebbe that Rashi of blessed memory, the famous commentator on the Torah, explains that this is specifically a reference to learning laws that are of practical relevance. That this is going to guarantee a person a place in the world to come. So that's what we should be learning on weekdays during this twilight time. Now the Alter Rebbe is going to go on and tell us what we should be learning on Shabbos during this time. So the Alter Rebbe says that on the Holy Shabbos, when Mincha comes around, that this towards the times of Mincha, then people should involve themselves in the halachos of Shabbos and the laws of Shabbos. Because the laws of Shabbos, says the Alter Rebbe, are a weighty law. This is a citation from Rashi in the Gemara in Masechet Shabbos, page 12a. And he says that it's very easy for a person to fall, God forbid. Even this to the point of doing something, God forbid, that makes a person liable for excision from the Jewish people or for stoning out of ignorance of these laws. So it's like, really got to be up to speed on these laws, the Alter Rebbe was saying. And as is taught in Pirkei Avos, chapter 4, Mishnah 13, it teaches there that doing a mistake, because like making a mistake and sinning inadvertently due to ignorance, due to not knowing something, this is considered to be an advertent mistake. It's not, so ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is not an excuse, God forbid. So thus, this has to do, not only is this the case when it comes to biblical commandments, but this is the case also with rabbinical commandments as well, that are so numerous, especially when we talk about the transgressions of muktzeh, which are so frequent. So he says that the laws concerning muktzeh are very often transgressed, unfortunately. And he says that there's a teaching that's taught in the Talmud Yerushalmi in Masechet Brachos 4:2, where it teaches that Chamurim divrei sofrim yoter midivrei Torah, which means basically that the stringencies of the rabbis, the rabbinic stringencies that were instituted, are more serious than even the stringencies in Torah. So it's like we shouldn't just say like, oh, that's just a rabbinical law, it's no big deal. Those are actually to be taken more seriously than the Torah laws themselves. And as it's taught, and then he's bringing another proof here. This is from Brachos, also from the Talmud Yerushalmi in Brachos 4:2, where it's taught that anybody who transgresses one of the Divrei Chachamim, one of the words of our sages, even something very small, like for example, like eating before the evening prayer or something like that, is chayav misa, is liable for death, as if they are transgressing a really serious sin of the Torah. So basically the point of all this is that the Alter Rebbe is saying that it's really important to know the laws because transgressing any law, even if it's seemingly a minor law or a rabbinical law, is still very, very serious and severe. And he goes on and he says that individuals should not separate themselves from the congregation, even to study something else. So meaning to say that, like, if the congregation is involved in learning a certain topic, then the individual should not go off and learn something else. He should actually be involved in learning together with the congregation, whatever it is everybody else is learning. And then the Alter Rebbe continues and he says then, and it goes without saying that all the more so a person should not leave if there are not 10 without him. So meaning that, like, if there's like 9 men in the room and then a guy there is like, you know what, I'm gonna just go do my own thing. No, if you leave, there's going to be less than 10 Jews in that room, then you need to come back and you need to make sure that you stay there. And the Alter Rebbe says about a person who does leave, what is said about a person who does leave? He cites a citation from Yeshayahu chapter 1 verse 28. Those who forsake God and his Torah shall be consumed. So it's very severe, right? Not to leave the congregation, not to distance yourself from the congregation. And this is a principle in general that often comes up in Judaism, that we're not supposed to be a recluse. Like, we shouldn't just go off and do our own thing. Judaism is very much a communal religion. We need to be around people, and people are really important for us. We've spoken about this before in the podcast. So, and the Alter Rebbe says that this has been spoken about. Our sages spoke about this. Our sages of blessed memory spoke about this, about everything having to do with Kedusha, everything having to do with holiness. And there's no holiness like the holiness of Torah. So if this is the case with anything holy, that a person should not separate themselves from the masses. So the Torah, since Torah and the Holy One, blessed be He, are entirely one, a person definitely should not separate themselves. And then to conclude here, the Alter Rebbe ends off with another really intense teaching. This comes from Smachot 2:10, where it says that anybody who separates themselves from the community will not merit to witness the community's consolation. So it's like if a person, God forbid, separates themselves in a certain way during times that they don't want to be part of the community, then when it would be good to be part of the community, they won't be a part of the community then. But then just to keep things positive, the Alter Rebbe concludes on a more positive and uplifting note, which he kind of conglomerates a few different citations from Tanakh here, where he basically says, anybody who listens to me will dwell securely, and in his days and in ours, Yehuda shall be saved, and Yerushalayim will dwell securely. Amen. May this be God's will. So basically, once again, it's a strong note here that we're learning. It's this idea of, we've learned a couple of things today. We learned that, first of all, it's really important to study the laws of Shabbos, because it's very easy to inadvertently break the laws of Shabbos, and ignorance is not an excuse, and a person will still be held liable for that. So definitely something that should be done, and especially should be done in public. And then and specifically during the time of Mincha on Shabbos, this is a good time to learn the laws of Shabbos. And then the second thing that we learned is really just the importance of an individual staying part of the community and not just going off and doing their own thing, especially in regards to learning. That if the congregation is learning something specific, then the person should stay there and learn what they're learning and not just go off and learn something else. So that's it for today. And that's actually the conclusion of Epistle 23. And we will start and finish a new epistle tomorrow, Epistle 24. So stay tuned for that, and I'll speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.